As many of you probably are, I am proper excited for the old world coming out. As much as I like Age of Sigmar, Fantasy is where it all started, and I am looking forward to getting back to some square bases. And, strangely, I'm looking forward to getting back to some really retro models. Now, unfortunately, I'm not quite famous enough to have attracted the Games Workshop gods, and I don't get early models. So, like a peasant, I had to dig around in my loft and see what sort of Bretonnians I had up there. And as you can see, I've got some ancient knights here that I'm going to be doing a bit of a test scheme on. The knight on screen is a standard blue and yellow. I want something nice and bright for this army. I want it to stand out, especially with the changes that have come with the whole army being the same colour scheme with the exception of the Grail Knights and the Questing Knights. To start off, we are going to be using an airbrush on this one. Next week's video, I'm going to do another Bretonnian Knight, and we're going to be using nothing but a paintbrush. So, if you're in a strop right now because this video is using an airbrush, you know who you people are. Don't worry, I've got other stuff coming. So to start off with, I'm using Games Workshop Yriel Yellow. I'm using equal parts Flow Improver, Vallejo Flow Improver, and equal parts water over a Bretonnian Knight, which is base coated in a white primer. This is really important. I don't normally paint over white because I find it incredibly frustrating because all of the recesses end up white and I've got to get my brush in there. But for this, I want a very, very bright, vibrant yellow. The other option that you can do is you can do a pre-shade with pink. I'm not a big fan of it. I've never felt the need to do it. I feel like I can get results which are just as good without it. But if it's something you guys want to see, then by all means let me know and I'll do a video on it. But for the time being, white base coat, going over this with Yriel Yellow. This model is not glued together. This is really important. The model is not glued together. The rider is separate and obviously it doesn't have the shield on it. For the time being, all we've got is it's blue tacked together. So later on, when we've got to paint in all of the metallics and that sort of stuff, it's going to make our life much easier. This is the second coat of the Yriel Yellow, so I get a nice solid base coat. I really like Games Workshop Yriel Yellow. It's a nice warm yellow, and I feel like that's quite important. Normally, my other choice would be P3 Cygnus Yellow, but unfortunately, it looks like P3 are discontinuing their paint range, so I don't really want to be relying on a colour like that. But as you can see, two nice coats. Keep it really simple, keep it slow and steady so we don't put too much paint on or build up too much so you get webbing or anything like that. Take it nice and slow, get a nice vibrant yellow. This is the foundation to start with. It's really important. In hindsight, what I would say is what I will probably do in future is I'll do the blue first and then the yellow. Just because if I paint yellow over the blue accidentally, it's much easier to hide. If I get blue over the yellow, it goes very, very green. This paint is Vallejo model color Amaranthe Red, but Games Workshop Troll Slayer Orange would also be just as good. And basically what I'm doing from below, I'm airbrushing this orange directly on to give me a nice warm shadow color. So we keep it really, really simple. The whole model is yellow. And then from below, we're airbrushing in the orange. You don't have to use this orange. It's just an orange I like. But ideally, you want a orange which is darker than the yellow. This gives it a nice shape to the fabric. And that's the hardest bit about these knights, ultimately. Because the fabric is so flat, especially on the newer ones. Next up, what we've got is Games Workshop Rhinox Hide. It's up to you if you do this, but I'm targeting the areas that are facing directly downwards. Same paint consistency as previously, and I'm just pushing those darks to Rhinox Hide. And what you'll find is because the Rhinox Hide is going over the orange, you get this nice orangey brown, which is really dark, and it makes that yellow really, really pop. And I'm happy with this result. I'm actually really, really pleased with the yellow. As I said, the big thing is I would have done the blue first and then the yellow later. Be careful with the Rhinox Hide. Like I said, like you really don't want a lot of Rhinox Hide. If you look, it's just underneath the fabric, just underneath the head. If you have too much, it's just going to make it look brown and you don't want that. So be very careful with the Rhinox Hide. Now, like I said a minute ago, the problem with the blue is I feel like I should have done the blue before the yellow. But the other thing that I wish I had done is gone a little bit darker with the blue. So I wish I had started from a black base coat on the blue and built up brighter and brighter, because it would have given me something a little bit richer. But Hindsight's a great thing. This is the test model. That's the point of the test model. So I can learn from it and decide how I'm going to do it going forwards. But the color that I'm airbrushing on right now is Vallejo model color light turquoise. I'm not sure what a Games Workshop equivalent would be. Maybe Games Workshop Lothern Blue would be quite a good one. But this is going to follow the same sort of process as the yellow. We're going to airbrush on the light turquoise, and then afterwards we're going to get a darker blue. In this case, Vallejo model color dark Prussian blue. And we're going to airbrush from below to give us a nice natural shadow to the actual fabric itself. So the paint process for this is really, really simple, really, really straightforward. The idea is we lay down a solid base coat, and then from below we're placing in the shadows. Same as on the shield. We've got the turquoise on, and then on either side of the shield we just place on our little shadow color with the dark Prussian blue. This gives us lots of depth. Now, as always, we can get a little bit of overspray on the model, and the dark Prussian blue has gone a little bit far up, so I can just go back in with that turquoise, the light turquoise, and I can reintroduce the highlights just to clean up. This is the benefit of the airbrush. It's why it makes it so easy. Now, the reason why I blue tack this model together is because they can be horses and knights. Like, mounted models can be an absolute nightmare when it comes to trying to get all of the details where the actual rider is attached to the horse. Because this is a test scheme, I'm going to keep this really, really simple. So what I've got here is scale 75 as usual when it comes to my metallics. So I've got scale 75 Black Metal. This is quite a dark silver, and I'm going to keep it really, really simple. Like, the details are just going to have a base coat and they're going to have a wash. It's not going to look bad, but it's not going to look overly exciting. If I've got 50 men-at-arms to paint, at best, all I'm going to be doing is putting on a base coat, a wash, and I'm going to do a bit of a dry brush on the metallics. If I've got 50 men-at-arms to do, and then 50 peasants, and then 30 knights, which is quite possible in a 2,000 point old world army, I'm not going to spend a ridiculous amount of time on all of these tiny little details. So with the bard in, this is Ghost Grey from Vallejo Game Color, but I guess like some kind of Space Wolves Grey from Games Workshop will do the job just as well. So the actual cloth sections on the harness, and also around the saddle, these are just having a base coat of Ghost Grey. All of the metallics are having a base coat of scale 75 Black Metal. And all I'm going to end up doing with all of these little details is I'm just going to put a bit of an Agrax Earthshade wash over them, just to add some depth to it. So keep it really, really simple. Like, this is not going to be a masterpiece. This paint job is trying to gauge how much time they're going to take and how much time I'm willing to invest. Once all of the areas are base coated, then the model is glued back together, and then I'm placing the wash on. So everything except from the fabric barding and the fabric around the saddle and the harness, whatever you call it, is having a Games Workshop Agrax Earthshade wash. That's it. Really, really simple, really, really straightforward. The fabric harness and the fabric around the saddle is not going to have a wash, and the barding is definitely not going to have a wash, because I want to keep the nice smooth paintwork that I got from the airbrush. So we're just going to leave the barding the way it is. Nice and simple. Overall, I think this looks really nice. Again, as I said, the blue needs to be a little bit darker, I think, for it to really work. The other thing that I would probably do next time when I'm batch painting these is when I lay down all of my color and then mask it up, to airbrush the yellow over the top or the blue over the top, depending on what you decide to do, I will do a varnish between it. So I'll varnish before I mask up. That way none of the paint gets torn off. It's just something that I skipped on this because I knew this wasn't going to be part of any army. You can see the shield and that fabric harness. I'm just going over it with Vallejo model color white, keeping it really, really simple, just to brighten it up, because obviously the grey gets lost. So the idea is the grey sits around the white. That's going to be our recesses. And that's it. It's a really simple paint job. We're using the airbrush to do most of the work, and then the washes just to make everything else have some kind of definition. I think with the actual army, the adjustment that I'm going to make at the moment, if I stick with this color scheme, the blue is going to be darker. I think I'm also going to put a lot more effort into the metallics and the details, but not an extreme amount. So probably like a little bit of a dry brush and maybe some edge highlights on top of it as well. I am really happy with the scheme. Just got some learning points out of it. I'm really excited for the old world, and I've got lots of content coming based around that setting. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, please hit the like button. It means a huge, huge amount to me. If you want to see more, naturally hit the subscribe. And if you do want to be part of the community, feel free to check out the Discord or join the members area for additional video content every week. Thank you very much and have a great weekend.